back into coaching thanks to CrossFit, what I found is when I gave seminars, people always ask me, they're like, how do you do it? Like, how are you up there and you're catering this content to the audience, but you're doing it in a way that is so unusual? That's what HQ was saying. And it's like, how? And I learned it from selling, that essentially what we are doing as coaches is we are salespeople.
Yeah. Very much.
And so, so that's really how I got, a roundabout way, my background. It's a lot more detailed than that. There wasn't that easy, to be honest, but a lot of hard work.
It's a work in progress.
Well, nothing's ever easy. People always say, like, you surprised at like how fast this happened in CrossFit. It's like, well, I mean, I'm 56 years old and I'm just taking in the CrossFit space. I've been here for 11 years just in CrossFit. And I mean, I've known Glassman since 2002.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that's
been a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a big journey, and that's where there are no gifts. It takes a lot of work to be able to make things happen.
I heard a saying for like everybody that has that overnight success, there's probably about 10 years behind it that nobody sees.
And what we do is you end up drawing on that. So like I worked in sales for 25 years, but what it teaches me is that sales experience. If I am looking at an athlete, how do I service that athlete? Like what I talk about in terms of gyms, it's the same thing we talk about in terms of products that we sell or represent. What's your competitive advantage? What's your value proposition? What separates you from everybody else? Because if you come in and you're like, oh, I have good quality, I have good on-time delivery, and I have good prices, it's like, well, so does everybody else.
Yeah.
And so you have to distinguish yourself in some way. Well, I learned that by selling for 25 years.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. So you were talking about the Ironman, and I had posted this question in the Facebook group, and I still have been getting questions. And it's one of these things where I've known this particular member or athlete for a long time, and I didn't know that this was one of her goals. But her question was, what's the number one piece of advice that you can give somebody whose lifelong dream is to run an Ironman? And I was like, you want to run an Ironman? How have you ever told me this?
That's awesome.
So I know there's a ton of different avenues that you can take this, but just one piece of advice for her that if she would want to do that, what would you think?
So, what's really interesting about humans is that we are constantly looking over the fence in terms of everything. Once things become part of our everyday life, we become complacent and bored. And so what happens is that in time, if you start in health and fitness and you decide to do some type of a fun run, let's say the local 5K, and you get roped into it with a bunch of your friends, and honestly, you've never done it before, and you're really, truly just trying to finish. That's it. But the thing is that we all sit and we'll look at that and go, that wasn't that bad. I'd like to do it again, but this time I want to have a good experience. And what I'm going to do is be a little more prepared. Well, in time, that same, that the juice that we get, that buzz, that excitement from doing it, it wears off. And the only way to get it is to go to a 10K and then a half marathon. And the thing is that when we finally get to that marathon, it is the same level of difficulty that it was in that 5K. And it's a gradual evolution. And what happens with people is that they, will go and they'll do a marathon and like, what could I do next to challenge myself? Because we're all looking for growth.
Yeah.
And what we do is we get in and we try a triathlon, and we'll do a sprint, and then we'll do an Olympic, and then we'll do a half, and then we'll do a full. I remember when I did Ironman my last time, it was 1989. So long ago, it almost doesn't count. And I remember saying to myself, I could do this 7 days in a row.
Wow.
And finish, in a respectable time.
Yeah.
That's how fit I was. What is incredible is when I think about that now, it's insane. That thought, it's ridiculous. And I even look at a full Ironman as what a ridiculous, incredible thing to piece that together in one event. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So here's the thing is that when I started, I didn't have that. The Ironman was the granddaddy, and it was the mothership of them all. And there was fringe triathlons, but it was all about that. And so, you know, I had done one triathlon, then I went to Kona and did Hawaii, and, you know, finished in 11 hours and something minutes. That was a little ambitious. And what happened is that it almost wasn't an enjoyable thing, and I almost quit forever.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so that's where people, what they need to do is taking a more gradual approach and enjoying the process so that the steps are not so significant, because the last thing that you want to do is get yourself into a situation and then you go, you know what, I'm out completely. No more fitness for me. And we see it all the time when people are forced to do, let's say, the CrossFit Open.
Yeah.
They're not competitors, and it's like they're roped into it and they're told, I want to do it. And so like, but I don't want to do it. And then they bomb in it, and they're embarrassed by performance. And it was like, I didn't even want this. And then they don't show up anymore.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful. If you do take that approach, the advice I would give is focus on your run. The run, without a doubt, is the hardest part of an Ironman. And it's not necessarily the volume. It's the mental side of it. Mental is where it's at, is that a lot of people mentally, they allow a negative thought to propagate, and that negative thought becomes accessible, and it becomes then a pattern of behavior, and that becomes the problem, and that's the source of death. So what you need to do is you need to develop your ability to control negativity. And that's the biggest challenge of them all. And that happens in the run.
It's funny that you say that, because like I've seen some documentaries on like buds training, like the Navy SEAL training, and they kind of say the same thing. They're like, it's so much physical, but it's so much mental of keeping negative thoughts out. So it's very interesting that you said that. So I'll kind of start going through some of these questions, and we can kind of just bust them out. And I know that you have your seminar, which I did. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. It was maybe a year ago. I remember Hunter McIntyre was there.
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't know who he was, but everybody else was making a big deal about it. But I know you have that, so I don't want you to feel like you're giving away keys to the kingdom here. So if anything like that, you can go as deep or as shallow into this as you want. But the question that I wanted to go over that somebody had asked is, how do you keep your athletes motivated when training day after day, even though they may not be competing for months down the road, especially probably now with what we're in? We don't even know if the CrossFit Games is going to happen.
Oh, that's true.
We don't know. I mean, everybody's kind of postponing things. So is the athletes that you train need that motivation? Are they almost like so type A that you're just there providing programming, or do some of them need a little bit more kind of coddling, I guess, or a push to motivate to train?
Yeah, this is a good question, and because we're all struggling from this situation now, whether or not you're going to the games or not, we're all struggling with, you know, our goals being upended. And here it is that you have this tendency of being lost because there's so much uncertainty. I mean, how long is this going to last for? Yeah. And then when it is over, what's the environment going to look like? And that uncertainty, it creates anxiety for everybody.
Yeah.
And so, you know, anxiety it's an okay thing if you use it properly. And one of the things that we must do is reevaluate our goals. I mean, for example, myself, I had a whole game plan, like you mentioned the seminar.
Yeah.
I had 30 seminars, and scheduling those around the world, working on, getting them filled, working on the content, putting the course online, all of that. And then boom, it's over. It gets upended. Yeah. I could sit and feel sorry for myself, and you know what? It would be perfectly justified of what we just lost out on. But what I have to do is it is up to me and every single person, whether you're going to the games or not, to reevaluate your situation and reevaluate your goals. and come up with a different plan. Everybody must do that. Gym owners struggle today because what's it going to look like? Can I even stay in business?
Yeah.
Well, for me, you know what? The outlook is, I think this virus is creating an awareness and importance of health and well-being. And we see that with the numbers of people outside. And I believe that there will be a significant influx of people coming in to gyms. And also the people are recognizing the need for social interaction, that community-based approach. And a CrossFit gym represents both of those things. The other thing that the elites do, though, is they're doing a lot of self-reflecting. They're looking at themselves. And what I mean by self-reflecting is looking at their strengths and weaknesses and truly examining those. This is a chance for them to really to take a step back and reflect. When times get busy, the first thing that people sacrifice is their own personal reflections. And what they really need to be doing is looking at their strengths, looking at their weaknesses, and identifying directions of opportunity, and then putting goals in place. And so, like, I've done the same thing. You know, what I did is I really wanted to implement a different type of a running program for myself. You know, one of the things that as we age, we lose range of motion and we lose our ability to generate power. And that's why you see old people shuffle. You know, when you go from the age of 40 to the age of 70, your stride length gets cut by 50% because of those two things. That's why you see old people shuffle. So they lose that power and that range of motion. Well, I've never actually written into a program for myself, being 56, working on my power output and my range of motion. It was just one of those things where it's like, oh, I'll get to it later. That's what I'm talking about. Knowing that these things are important, but you've just never had the time. That's what people really need to be doing, so that when this is done, now you are on a better trajectory. Your focus is clearer. The range of options, you know what? You know, and there's more certainty in them. And that's important. You know, games athletes, a lot of times what they do is they just do, and they don't think about what they're doing it for. Oh, I saw so-and-so doing it on Instagram, and this is why I'm doing it. Now, you know what? Is that truly the highest and best use of your time? And that's what we should all be asking ourselves.
Yeah, I think reevaluating goals now, like what is our goal to come out of this whenever this ends, is really important. And I've kind of been carrying that over because, for example, we've had some people in the gym that, you know, they just got their first muscle up a couple weeks before, and they're like, I don't want to lose it. And it's like, well, okay, let's reevaluate kind of what our goals are going to look like now, because everything is kind of forced to change upon us. So
that's absolutely right. That's right.
The next question is, I'm curious of what type of training you would recommend to build functional endurance during this quarantine. How to best optimize strength and endurance when these seem to be somewhat of a trade-off between the two. And I was kind of curious about this, your response to this.
Yeah, so that's a real interesting question. So I get this quite a bit. And one of the things that I've never experienced is athletes that I have worked with have gotten weaker while following an endurance program. What I recommend for athletes is doing 2 running-based workouts per week. And the workouts that they do is based upon their particular goals or their strengths and weaknesses. And so it's not necessarily long and slow. Some cases, you know, athletes need more speed. And so they incorporate, you know, shorter time domains with longer recovery. But every athlete that I've worked with has gotten stronger during this. And what there seems to be a lot of confusion over is this thing called the interference effect. And this interference effect, essentially what it is it's saying that high levels of endurance training, what it appears to do is negatively impact people's strength. Now, the research on that is inconclusive. It's inconclusive in the sense of how much endurance, the frequency, the volume, the movement will ultimately interfere with your strength. What I have found is small doses of endurance has been complementary to strength, particular a running-based program. So here's the thing is that when we lift, one of the things that we recognize is that when something is heavy or we ultimately do enough volume of something, we must activate our entire spectrum of muscle fibers. And when we run, we are developing our legs, but in a structure supporting role, meaning most of the weights that we lift, we're supporting our structure anyway. So if we develop and optimize our muscle fibers, all of them, in that standing position, then those muscles are available to us when we lift. The weakness that a lot of pure strength-based or power lifters have is that they are not overloading their entire spectrum of fibers. What they're doing is really targeting the fastest of the fast. By incorporating a running-based program with longer time domains, we are doing is targeting those slow twitch fibers that need volume to overload them. So in this spectrum of fibers, we have fast twitch and slow twitch, and the fastest of the fast, the quality that they bring is that they have tremendous speed, strength, and power, but they can endure. If we slow it all the way down and we get down to walking intensities in those slow twitch fibers, well, they can't generate a lot of speed, strength, and power, but you know what they can do? They can endure. What we need to do is we need to overload this entire spectrum of fibers to maximize our performances. And are we doing enough to overload those slow twitch fibers? And so one of the things that's interesting is that, you know, like you take athletes that I've worked with, take Camille, she improved her mile time by over a minute. Katrin, over a minute. Rich Froning, 40 seconds in 5 months. Jason Khalipa, 40 seconds in 7 months. I mean, the list is extensive of improvement. And what I did in most cases is I just slowed them down to overload those slow twitch fibers in that standing position. And as a byproduct of that, Rich Froning's openly said that in the first 10 weeks of working together, every single lift went up. And this is after he won the games 4 times. His vertical leap went from 31 to 33 inches. So the key is to not do so much that you're interfering. Now, there's plenty of research, that supports that the fact that you can do endurance training and a strength-based program and get stronger. But you know what? We all know that if we just solely and exclusively focus on strength, your strength numbers will go up higher. Well, it depends again on your goals. We in CrossFit are not specialists. We don't focus on, you know, powerlifting, and we also don't just exclusively focus on endurance-based, you know, performances. We want to cover a broad spectrum. And so what you need to do is you need to create a balance. And balance is the key.
That's great. That's I think I hit the nail on the head. And that I think that kind of covered the next question, which was like, how often do you recommend doing pure endurance, say 30 minutes of rowing or just 30 minutes of running or longer? And I think you answered that question within that. The
key is, though, is on that. What we need to do is recognize if we do have an ability to do any type of endurance workout. Should we ride a bike? Should we swim? Should we row? Should we ski? Should we run? The thing is that we must recognize that when our body weight is supported by an object, there's less value in that workout. What we need to do is we need to be able to support our structure in doing movement. And so running, without a doubt, is one of the higher values of time because you must support your body. If we row, then you know what? Your weight is supported by the object. When you ride a bike, unless you're going uphill, it's supported by the object. swimming pool supported by the object.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where, if we look at in terms of priority, and you have that ability going outside and running and getting your structure sound, is without a doubt the higher value.
It seems like most of the best kind of return on investment there would be running. And it seems like where we are now, not everybody has a rower. We've let everybody borrow equipment here in the gym. So some people took rowers, some people took bikes and skiers, and you name it. But so it seems like even where we are now, running would probably be the best sense to kind of work on that. And it seems like the best return on investment for
it. It is.
Yeah.
And that's again, it goes back to goal setting. No one has unlimited free time. And what we're tasked with is, how do we advance someone towards their goals in the most efficient and effective way? And games athletes, same truth. They don't have unlimited free time. They must find the highest and best use of their available time.
Mm-hmm. And be most efficient with it. It's funny. All these questions seem to be running into each other. I think we're covering really well. So the next question that I got was, for your average member who does a few comps a year, how many days a week should they be doing aerobic only, like track, running, rowing, or biking? And I think we kind of covered that, like two days of some kind of running program would probably be best. Is there anything that you would want to elaborate on that?
I would like to elaborate on just the intensity in those workouts. So if you don't have a comp scheduled, or if you don't compete, then what we need to do is we need to be doing these longer time domain or endurance types workouts to help create a balance in your overall programming. So if you're, let's say, going into the gym and you're doing some high intensity workouts, then we should create a balance in your overall programming by doing a lower intensity workout, either on the rower, the bike, or running, and focus in those cases just on time. I really feel that people in CrossFit are too focused on intensity. What we need to do is we need to create a balance in terms of our efforts. And, like in our course, what we learn is that, what we're trying to do is be great at all time domains. And the truth is that if we're always putting a high intensity stimulus on our body, then we are not prepared to perform well in long time domains. And so if you're not doing competitions, then my recommendation is like, take your foot off the gas pedal, slow down, and just focus on time. And I even tell people, you know what, if you want to go out and you go for a run and you don't run very often and you don't enjoy it and you get tired in the middle of the run, do what I do. Just stop and walk for a while. As soon as you get feeling better again, go again. But what we want to do is we want to create a balance. And that's the most important thing. And too often I see people just wanting the sexy stuff. I just want to lift heavy and I want to do short time domains and then give me a 3 to 4 minute burner at the end.
Yep, very true. The next question I find pretty interesting as well. It says, what is the best way to improve endurance for weight movements, thrusters, snatches, etc.? How much time should we spend increasing your 1 rep max so that the working weight is a smaller percentage of the total capacity versus the volume of training to increase the total overall work time? So I think, like, should I increase my front squat so that my thrusters at 95 are lighter and easier to do?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question because there's so many aspects of the response. So without a doubt, your 1 rep strength will have an impact. It's the same thing that holds true in your maximum running velocity. If you have a very high running speed, it makes every intensity below that or slower than that easier. But what we need to do is we need to really be addressing the individual athlete's strengths and weaknesses. So when I look at athletes, we have to do some sorts of assessments. Do you need more strength in your diet, or do you need to improve your ability to recover? Are you just getting tired in long time domains? So, when we take a look at a push-up and you do your unbroken, how many reps of push-ups can you do? And what's the reason why you can't do one more? And is it your push-up strength that is limiting your ability, or is it that you just get tired? And so part of it is that when we look at work capacity, strength does matter, but we also must recognize that fatigue matters too. And if fatigue is preventing you from doing more repetitions, then what an athlete needs to do is address their ability to recover. They need to be working on their aerobic system. And so when we look at intensities, do we want to work on fast twitch, strength-based programming that's anaerobic, that creates fatigue, right? Power output, high force, or do we want to go to the other end, which is aerobic and slow twitch? These aerobic fibers are the fibers that help you recover and clear fatigue. Remember, when we do this high intensity element, we create fatigue. It dumps into the muscles that are moving. Well, we know that our aerobic slow twitch fibers is what removes that fatigue. It takes that lactate and consumes it as a fuel. And when it does, it takes the fatigue causing properties out of your body. And so there's this balance between what we are doing in terms of work capacity. One, we have this high intensity element, high power output, high force, our strength, anaerobic, which creates fatigue. But we also have the low intensity aerobic slow twitch fibers that clear fatigue. It is a balance. That's why you can't just keep shoving more work in, because eventually your recovery limits your performance. And so what we need to do is we need to look at athletes and what is, again, their highest value of time. Do they need to be working on their strength? If you only have so much time in the day, should you be working on your sprinting, or should you be working on your jog recovery clearance ability? Meaning, instead of doing, 5x5 bench press heavy and focusing on 5 repetitions and the load that you're lifting, maybe what you should be doing is you should be doing a workout that focuses on what are you doing in between in terms of your recovery on that 5x5 bench press. So everybody, when they're doing a 5x5 bench press, what do they do in between? They rest for 3 minutes. Why? Because if you don't, you can't do the 5 reps or you can't lift the load. Well, if you're telling me that the reason why you can't do more unbroken push-ups because you just get tired, maybe what you should be doing is in your next 5x5 bench, don't focus on your number of reps as your priority. Don't focus on the load you're lifting, but focus on that 3 minutes of just sitting in a chair and doing something different, meaning do an active recovery. Stay in the bench. And you know what I want you to do is pull, not rack your 5 rep load, whatever you are lifting, and then pick up a PVC pipe and mimic the same movement pattern, but do it nice and slow. And as an active recovery, what you're doing is you're going to do a minute, maybe 90 seconds, a very slow active recovery bench press with the PVC. So instead of doing nothing in your recovery, what you're doing now is you're actively moving the muscles that just encountered a massive dose of fatigue. And what we're doing is training them on how to clear that fatigue in the movement pattern of a push-up. And so when we look at, do we focus on the strength? Do we focus on the recovery? That again is on the athlete. Do you want to work on your recovery, or do you want to improve your strength? Both of them have value, but where is your weakness? And that's what an athlete needs to pick. Now, if we look at like the thruster, a lot of athletes, let's make it easier for people. Let's just talk about a burpee.
Okay.
If we look at a burpee, people say it all the time as coaches, right? You hear it. I'm not good in burpees.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means because a burpee has so many different aspects to it.
Yeah.
Are you saying that you're not good in the push-up? Are you not good at jumping your feet in? Are you not good at the hinge? or you're not good at the jump. And so what we have to do is as athletes is identify, are you, let's say, is your weakness in the burpee, let's make it two things, the push-up, or is it just the jump with the clap overhead? Well, if that's the case, let's just say it's your jump. So what I want you to do next time you do burpees, because your jump is your weakness, you're going to do a burpee. And instead of just doing one jump, what I want you to do is I want you to do 10 jumps. I want to focus our time on the best value for you. And you said your weakness was your jumping. Same thing on a thruster. Thruster has two movements. It has the squat and the press. Yeah. Where's your weakness? Yeah. If me doing a 95-pound thruster, what is my limitation? Well, for me, honestly, it's getting out of that squat. I mean, for me to do a high volume at 95 pounds, it's hard for me. So Chris, you know what you're going to do in this thruster workout? You're going to do your weakness. You're going to do 3 squats at 95 and then 1 press. Everybody else that you said yours is a press, you're going to do 1 squat and 3 presses. You're going to focus people on their time. Where is that weakness? So if we did a rowing workout, we could have 2 different groups. We're going to do 10 sets. One group is going to do a 30-second sprint, max effort, 3 minutes of rest. The other group is going to switch that. 3 minutes moderate, 30 seconds of rest. So the people that need more endurance, they do 3 minutes moderate, 30 seconds of rest. The people like me, I need to work on my speed, strength, and power. I'm going to do a 30-second sprint, 3 minutes of rest. Same 10 rounds for both of us, same total time domain. It's just that the focus is different. This is where athletes, it's unfair to place that burden on a coach. You as an athlete need to come in and go, you know what? My limitation, I just get tired. Okay, you know what? Then we're going to work on active recoveries. We're going to focus, instead of you sitting in a chair and getting good at sitting in a chair, what we're going to do in your 5x5 back squat is we're going to do an active recovery. And maybe what you're going to do is you're going to do 1 minute of very slow active recovery front squats with the PVC, or air squats in between. We're going to get you to do more work in the same amount of time, but we're going to do it at a slow jog recovery intensity. That's how endurance athletes build capacity. We don't just do a 100-meter sprint and sit in a chair. We do a 100-meter sprint and then we do a 300-meter jog.
And I remember being at your seminar, and PVC pipe never felt so heavy. I think you had us take plates, and you said, listen, you might want to grab a 45, but I'm going to check your ego a little bit. So I grabbed a 25, and I'm glad I did, because we were doing the presses, and then you had us pick up PVC pipes, and I'm telling you, the PVC pipe never felt so heavy. It was very. I did that. I did a workout once with Sam Dancer and Chris Spieler in Hawaii, and they were doing handstand push-ups for 12 seconds, and then they would come down and do the PVC slow shoulder press. And they both looked at me before and they're like, I could probably pick up a 45-pound bar. And I'm like, just calm down, big boy. Like, this is going to get heavy. And Sam Dancer, I love him. And when he hit his 4th round, I come over and he's literally chicken winging a PVC pipe to get it up. And he's arching his back and he's like, don't talk to me. Like, but I mean, that's the thing, is that what we're showing people is that we're getting you to do more work, but we're disguising the recovery. And most people are going to run into a muscular stamina failure because they've never done 5 minutes of handstand push-ups or 5 minutes of shoulder press or 5 minutes of push-ups. Yeah, that was a good one. I vividly remember that. The next question, I think it's so funny that we're covering a lot of these just in the questions. So the next question is how does he incorporate recovery and rest into his training? What is the outlook on that, and is there optimal amount that he has found to make more progress? And I think it depends, kind of like what you were just talking about.
It does depend, but there are some rules. So when we look at recovery, we want to look at how much our energy has been depleted. So we don't have unlimited energy. We don't. We need this energy in order to contract our muscles. And we know that there's these three primary energy sources. And so the first, when at 3, 2, 1, go, all three energy systems turn on, but they turn on at different rates. The first energy system that actually contributes energy to allow our muscles to move is that phosphagen system. Now, the phosphagen system, it delivers a massive amount of energy very quickly, but it only lasts fully turned on for about 10 seconds. So the rule of thumb is that if you want to do something that requires a very high amount of energy output, so something that is extremely heavy, or maybe it's like a short sled sprint or a hill sprint, something under 12 seconds, you must assume that if you've gone 12 seconds or under, that energy system is drained. You need 3 minutes to fully restore it. So what you need to do is you need to do a very slow active recovery or sit around and do nothing. That's why in a 5x5 back squat, you sit in a chair, is because you're trying to replenish the system.
Yeah.
So that is important, that you allow yourself 3 minutes. Now, what if it's only 5 seconds? Well, then you don't need 3 minutes. And so what you want to do is you want to keep track of, as an athlete, are you generating the same amount of power output and performance in your next repetition? So what I mean by that is, let's say you're doing 10-second sled sprints and you push that sled 40 yards the first time and you allow yourself 90 seconds to recover. Well, let's say you only push that sled 35 yards, you're 5 yards short. Well, now what you've done is you've really taught yourself to hurt really bad, but your muscles learn to go slower, right? Because they only went 35 yards versus 40.
Yeah.
You never want to, when you're training maximal energy output, to hurt real bad and go slower, slower, slower. So what you have to do is monitor your performance and make sure that you're getting enough rest so that you maintain the performance output. Now, for some of us, you know what, let's just say that we had 10 sled sprints scheduled for 40 yards a piece, and we take that full rest and all of a sudden we get to number 7 and we can't do it. Well, what we'll do is we'll try taking 4 or 5 minutes of rest. And if we're still short, then we call the workout. That's where an athlete needs to know, what is the objective of the workout. If it is pure speed and output and the performance fails, we never want to actually put them in a position where they're hurting real bad and going slower and slower, because now we're training them to hurt bad and go slow, and that's not the purpose. So that's important. Now, the second system that kicks in is that glycolytic system. We know this as anaerobic energy without oxygen. And this system, this is the second one to kick in. And this is a lot more difficult, because it really depends upon how much lactate you build up by using this system. Remember, you use anaerobic energy, the byproduct is lactic acid, lactate, and these fatigue-causing properties. Well, when you do Fran, yeah, it's a 3-minute event, but how much time would you need if you had to do 3 different rounds of Fran in order to fully recover? You'll probably need an hour.
Yeah.
So it really depends on what your objective are, what they really are. In track and field, if you did a 400, pretty much as hard as you could go, 98, 99%, you want to retain some control, we would give you 30 minutes of rest. So what you need to do during that 30 minutes is an active recovery. And what active recovery means is you're doing is moving slowly, and those slow twitch fibers are going to consume that lactate as a fuel. And when it does, it takes those fatigue-causing properties, that acidity, out with it. So we will take up to 30 minutes. Now, the rule of thumb on time domains longer than, like when we go into aerobic side, meaning any workout that's over 3 minutes, which is going to now be aerobic, we can take a much more aggressive approach. meaning what we can do is look at the time domain of an interval, and really we can look at something, between a work to rest of 1-to-1, maybe even less rest than that. For me, when I look at 20-minute intervals, those are workouts that honestly can get no rest.
Yeah.
So there's the answer. It really depends on the energy system and then what the intent of the workout is. Now, this is where what I mean why it gets confusing. And this is, when I was young and training, coaches would give me this mumbo jumbo. It was like, you tell me one thing, but then you tell me something that's completely opposite.
Yeah.
And so it gets confusing. And that's why talking to a coach, it's important. So I could easily say, here's our workout. What we're going to do is we're going to start at the base of a hill and we're going to run 15 seconds up that hill. And then you're going to walk down to the bottom and then you're going to go again. I'm not going to give you 3 minutes of rest. As soon as you hit the bottom, you're going to go again. And what's going to happen is that lactate's going to build up.
Yep.
And number 2 is going to actually cover less distance than number 1. Number 3 is going to be shorter. Number 4 is going to be shorter. Every time it's going to be 15 seconds, but you're going to cover less ground because you have less, sorry.
Oh, yeah, fine.
Because you have this buildup of lactic acid. The acidity is building up and it's shutting down your muscles from functioning. That is a very valuable workout. But Chris, you just said that with the sleds, if it gets less, that's not valuable and you should call it. That's where it gets confusing.
Yeah.
The thing is it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. When we're running uphill, we're not focusing on speed. We're not focusing on our ability to generate velocity. We're looking at power output. And so in this case, what I'm looking at is I want to see if you can keep your muscles turned on under higher and higher doses of lactate. What is your ability to tolerate higher doses of lactate? Those are lactate tolerance workouts because we know when that lactate builds, the muscles want to shut down on us. And what we want to do is we want to prevent that from happening. And that is a trainable adaptation. So that's where what we need to do as athletes, we need to understand what the purpose is, because sometimes what we're trying to do is improve your tolerance to lactate. Sometimes we're looking at your ability to generate speed through the use of that energy system. And that's where it does get confusing for people. And that's why they need to be asking questions. Yeah.
No, that's a very good point. And just like all these are running right into it. I love how this is flowing. So it says, take us inside Chris Hinshaw's mind. What are you thinking about when you program a workout? Are there any specific things you want to incorporate for it to be a well-programmed workout?
That is a great question. So the thing is that writing of workouts is an easy thing. It's easy, but there's 2 main things that we have to do in workouts as coaches. One is that we must be identifying the highest value of time for the individuals that are doing it. What is it? And the athlete needs to understand the purpose of the workout. So we have to write workouts that respect their time, that drive towards their goals. But the other is the athlete needs to be told what is the purpose. Because when we hand it off to them, as athletes, they own it. And, it's kind of for us. Like if we sit at the door on the way out, they're leaving class and we're like, good job, good job, good. I don't know if you really did a good job. I don't know if you were really working hard. I don't. And so what we have to do is we have to give them that responsibility to evaluate it. And so, when I look at the writing of workouts, there's these 3 main qualities in every workout. And, there's volume in it. There's our intensity, the speed, the strength, the load we lift, and then there's the recovery. And we know as coaches that with good nutrition, good recovery, we can manipulate one of those 3 qualities and drive a specific adaptation. So simply put, it's like if you want to run a half marathon, then what I do is I add in more running volume every week. And with good nutrition, good recovery, your body adapts so that the body is prepared to run a half marathon. And that's how easy it is.
Yeah.
But what we must do is we must in this process, make sure that that dovetails with what the athlete is interested in doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. The other major factor is, what are we doing as coaches to keep athletes motivated,
Mm-hmm.
to keep them interested, to retain them?
Mm-hmm.
Because in my opinion, the number one thing, and I said this in our course, that I judge my performance on is retention.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing I'm interested in. If I was going to interview any coach, I would ask, you know what, tell me about your participants, your athletes that you coach, and how long have you coached them for? If you're able to hold on to an athlete, that tells me that you're able to provide continuous value to them. They see the value. Most of the time, coaches believe that they're providing this value when in fact, the athlete doesn't see it that way.
Yeah.
You know, I early on, and I don't know if I said this in my course, but when I met Camille LeBlanc-Bazinet, it was in June of 2013, and she showed up at the track one day that I was there with Jason Khalipa, and at the end of it, she loved the workout, and she comes up and she's like, "So like you be my coach, and we go to the game, and I win the game, and you get to keep and be my coach. But if I don't get more better, then I never call you again." And I was like, that floors me. But I'm driving home and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, she's right though.
Yeah.
Why would she stay with me if I'm not providing value? And so what we have to do is we have to provide value. And the number one thing is we want to create a level of confidence in everyone. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you're a Matt Frazier or Rich Froning, Tia, it doesn't matter. We have to build confidence in them. And the way that we do that is by giving them sources of knowledge, mm-hmm. pieces of information that gives them insight about themselves. Mm-hmm. It's not just shoving things onto them. And so, you know, when I look at adults, and I mentioned it earlier, like I think there'll be a huge influx of people coming into CrossFit after this is done. But those people have lost their fitness. Life got in the way in some way. It's maybe it was health, it was family, their job. And you know what? They're going to walk in the door and they're going to be insecure. Mm-hmm. And if you are going to write workouts that focus on the biggest and the baddest and the strongest, those people are not going to have confidence. Yep. They're not going to show up. Mm-hmm. And so what you have to do is you have to do things that make them feel like, you know what? I actually learned something about myself today. I'm inspired. I'm motivated. I didn't do the best in that workout, but if I could do it again, I could be better. Yeah. And that's what we want. We want to light a spark. Mm-hmm. And so that's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to inspire and to also, though, to do that from an entry-level athlete to an advanced athlete. Mm-hmm. And what I end up thinking about all the time is if I had a 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old, how would I program for them? Mm-hmm. Because kids are no different than those adults that are going to walk in the door. The insecurities that kids have, especially people like me that was late in developing. We have to do things that are based upon skill, or better yet, why don't we write workouts that they're actively involved in it? Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is, like, why not write a workout where the warm-up dictates the number of repetitions that athletes do? Mm-hmm. So the workout today, what we're going to do is we're going to be focusing on the thruster. Mm-hmm. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a warm-up. Mm-hmm. And we're going to break the thruster into 2 different parts. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by doing a squat, and then we're going to then do the press, and then we're going to do a thruster. So in our warm-up, what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 30-second rounds. Mm-hmm. And what I want you to do is I want you to do those at a moderate intensity. Mm-hmm. And what I want you to do is you're going to do the first one, and you're going to count your reps. So let's say in your first one with your squats, and what I want you to do is I just want you to hold the plate. Mm-hmm. So you could pick whatever plate, doesn't even matter to me. Mm-hmm. Anything up to a 55 you could pick, doesn't matter. And let the athlete pick it. Yeah. They're then going to do their 30 seconds, and they're going to count their reps, and let's just say that they did 15.
Mm-hmm.
Now, their job in rounds 2 and 3 is to perfectly match when you say start and stop that same number of 15 reps. They don't see a clock, but they have to perfectly pace it. So you're teaching them the skill of pacing.
Mm-hmm.
For every miss that they have to do a burpee as punishment. Mm-hmm. So during the recovery, they do a burpee. Mm-hmm. Well, so they finish their warm-up of 3, and now what you're going to do is you're going to take the plate and you're going to do a press. Same 30 seconds. They're going to rest, and then for rounds 2 and 3, they're going to try and hit that same number of repetitions. And then you're going to warm up the thruster. Same thing with the plate, but you're going to do thrusters, 30 seconds. You're going to give them full recovery. But now for the workout's going to be 5 rounds of your number of reps that you did in the front squat for your first round, your number of reps that you did in the press first round, and then your number of reps that you did in the thruster first round. We're going to do this every 2 minutes on the 2 minutes for 5 times through. Mm-hmm. So you're going to do your number of reps. There's no way it's going to take you a minute and a half.
Yeah.
You could do it in a minute and 15 seconds. And now that's going to be 1 round. You rest the remainder of the time.
Yeah.
You're going to look at the clock the entire way. When you finish in 1:15, you look at the clock, write down 1:15. What I want is every round after that to be 1:15. Mm-hmm. You're going to learn the skill of pacing, but more importantly, you created relative intensity and you got the athlete involved in the writing of the workout. Now, whether you had a 55 or a 10, you know what? It's more reps or less reps.
Yeah.
As coaches, I don't care. I'm teaching you a skill of pacing, but you're now actively involved in the writing of the workout. And that's what I'm talking about, getting them engaged where when they mess up, it's on them, not you. Mm-hmm. And too many times we take the blame for something that's not our fault. Mm-hmm. Because they didn't give us any input, we had to make a judgment call and, okay, we got it wrong. Mm-hmm. Okay, you know what? We're not doing that today. Mm-hmm. You don't know what weight to pick? You know what? If you're not comfortable with it, pick something lightweight. You'll just do more reps.
Yeah. I love
it. That's what I mean is we need to be, when we look at these athletes and writing of workouts, what makes a great workout is when an athlete is reflective afterwards. Could I be better if I had the chance to do it again? Mm-hmm. But they must, in order to do that, understand the purpose of that workout.
Yeah. That's great. I want to respect your time. And I have 2 questions that I wanted to kind of pivot to the side just a little bit. It's one question that somebody asked. And the question is, has he started training some of his athletes differently, or has he had an increased clients after the 2019 games? It seems to favor endurance athletes. Basically, I just want to hear him talk about the opinions of the CrossFit games and the cuts, because it seems he may be a little salty still. So I thought that was funny.
I think it's great. I spoke to Vellner 2-3 days ago, and we were talking about the Fittest movie, and for me, so I one of the things that I don't ever, if you ask a question, I'm just going to give it straight. In my opinion, I don't feel that it gave a complete test.
Yeah.
It'd be like if you went to a lifting meet and it was like, okay, we're going to make cuts after 2 events. And it's like, wait, you cut me after I did my number 1 event, which is bench press. Like, that's not reasonable. If you went bench press into deadlift, I would be in first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that they didn't find the fittest. I believe that Tia and Matt and Mayhem, without a doubt, was, top of the pile. But it would have changed things up if it was more traditional in the way in which the games was intended to be, which is a complete test.
Yeah.
And that's where I had an issue.
Yeah, I think Dave Castro was on a podcast with Talking Elite Fitness, and it seemed like his goal was to find just the fittest man and fittest woman, fittest team. The 2 through 20, he didn't seem to necessarily care about. And you look at it that way, and you're like, well, you did do that. But 2 through 20 was kind of just a mix-up, for sure.
Yeah. So that's where it's like Yeah, for me as a fan, so it's different than as a coach. As a
Sure.
fan, I I wanted to see, different battles in there. I wanted to see some excitement. Yeah, and we didn't have that. There
Yeah.
wasn't that. And Dave Castro that writes these workouts, there is a lot of passion in the way in which he's writing these, and he recognized years ago that these events have to be thrilling. They have to look good on TV.
Yeah.
They have to be visually like exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Did we get that? And that's where it's like he can't admit it,
Yeah.
but we know the flavor. I mean, just the way in which he writes regional workouts, where that last workout, all of a sudden everything, and we as fans love it, and he does that on purpose, and he didn't get that this year.
Yeah.
He had to give Frazier, I mean, what's so funny in the Fittest movie, he says, I don't believe Frazier knew that bag dropped.
Yeah.
And you gave him some arbitrary penalty that had no bearing, and it was like, why was that? Was it to create that level of excitement?
Yeah.
Right? Because that was one of the more exciting things that happened. It was like, what happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
Other than that, it was kind of just like, it was kind of boring.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, so the one thing I would just want to go back to that somebody had asked, I told him I would ask about, is nutrition, and how does it play a factor between the type of aerobic exercises or athletes? Is there, and I know you may not dive too deep into the nutrition side of it, but just kind of want to get your thoughts on that.
So for me, the number one concern I have is this zero carbs. I really struggle with, and I'm okay with keto diets. Like I have a lot of athletes that I work with that, they feel better, which is great. They just need to understand that the way the body converts energy, whether it's fats or carbs, the body, it's easier to convert a carb into energy than a fat into energy. And if we are interested in doing high intensity training, high intensity protocols, which is a fundamental of CrossFit, you need to have carbs available in order to hit that high intensity and to be able to do it repeatedly. And so if you are low in carbs, fine, but just recognize that your definition of high intensity is not high intensity. And that's my major concern, because one of the problems is that we need to do high intensity to maintain our VO2s in all of these different movements. And the problem is that if we are in a no carb diet or a very low carb diet, our lower intensity speeds are relatively fast. But as soon as we lose our VO2 and that falls, it's going to put pressure on our lactate threshold intensity. And then that's going to put pressure on our aerobic threshold intensity. And what we need to do is we need to keep this VO2 as high as we possibly can to allow our maximum sustainable pace to climb. And that part concerns me. And that's my major issue is the lack of carbs, which ultimately hurts their intensity, it hurts their long-term performance, and it hurts their recovery.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. All right,
good.
Last two and I'm done, I promise. One, are you going to take, first off, the certification that I did, the course that you had was awesome. I wish it was 2 days. And
best compliment there is.
Yes. And then my question here is, are you going to write a book? Because I would love to have just some knowledge that you have into a book.
I think about a book, and I have things held in chapters. But I think what I'm going to do is actually take my existing course, and I'm doing that right now. I've been working on that now for 2.5, 3 months of taking it and putting it online. What I want to do is I want to make the content that's in the course accessible over and over and over, so that people can rewind it, listen again. And what I can do online that I can't do live is provide an incredible amount of supporting documentation. So whenever I say something, here's the supporting study.
Yeah.
Instead of me telling case studies, what I want is how great would it be for Julie Fouché to say, in our first meeting, this is what went down, and he had me do this, and I had panic attacks in my first 400, and then I pose it as a question. Okay, so now we're all Julie Fouché's coach. What do you recommend? And I could have that as multiple choices of which you guys can all pick. To me, it gives a lot of opportunity for me to be creative and provide different rabbit holes of content that I cover. And in the course, there are always these moments where it's like and you feel it, there's more, but he's shutting it down because he's got to go through all these other objectives, right?
For sure. I'm like, I just want more.
So that's where it's like I'm spending my time on that. The other thing that I'm doing is I've written out a level 2.
Oh, nice.
So I want to do those live, which will be a deeper dive into programming. And there'll be assignments that people would have in advance, and then they'll have to come prepared.
Oh, that's great.
Because like people out there have amazing ideas. And in the level 1 that I do, here's what I do. Here's my methodology. Here's my approaches. And here's the backing of science behind these things. And I lay it all out. I want to get other people's inputs because I can learn from other coaches.
Yeah. And
so I like that. The last thing that we're doing, which is really exciting, is that we've had 4,500 people through our course.
Wow.
And crazy. I know, and I've done them all, like me and Heidi. And so what I want to do is I want to activate that group of people. And what I'm almost done with is a 2-hour intensive that takes the core of the aerobic capacity course, and it creates an opportunity for the people that have gone through the level 1 to teach this within their community and charge for it. So part of it is that I believe, have an opportunity to help coaches make more money and teaching these methodologies within their local community that I can never do.
Yeah.
And so what I want to do is give them a platform to be able to go out, capture the group, charge what they want to. I'll manage that on their behalf. I'll give them a script. I'll give them the outline. I'll give them certificates and treat them almost like the way CrossFit treated me, where you're my subject matter expert within the community. And so it's a way for people, if they're the endurance specialist at the gym and they've gone to the course, hey, you know what? I got a 20-person cap. I'm charging $30, and it's a 2-hour class, and it's approved by Chris Hinshaw Aerobic Capacity. And where are they going to make that kind of money on the weekend? And it supports their local community with a sound methodology and all the take-homes that you got out of the level 1. So for me, that's where it is. And I think that finding ways to reach that community before they disappear, because I mean, if we lose half the gyms out of this virus, that will be devastating.
Yes. How
many level 1 trainers are gone?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if there's 160,000 level 1 trainers out there, how many are going to go?
Yeah.
And so I feel like we need to find ways to get them to make money.
Yes. Yeah.
And to also spread good information.
That's great. I would be very interested in that.
Thanks, man.
Oh man, that's really cool. That's exciting. Have you been training with Haley Adams?
So Haley left, her school closed. And so she's been back home since spring break. I mean, since like January, end of January.
Yeah. When do you think she's going to win the games?
Haley is such an interesting person because I've always said that the scariest person to come into our sport is going to be an athlete that had a background, a true background in endurance training, someone who was looking and focused on long time domains, wasn't concerned about intensity, and build a solid aerobic base, a solid aerobic foundation. Haley would routinely do 10-mile runs, half marathon runs. I don't know of any games athlete that can go out and run a half marathon other than Haley Adams.
Yeah.
Haley can run a half marathon this afternoon and be fine tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so she did that when she was young. She also had a gymnastics background. Mm-hmm. And so she never focused on high intensity. She never focused on strength. What she did was she allowed her body to develop.
Yep.
And then now this year is focusing on strength, and she's seeing some amazing results. And so Haley can run a mile in, 5:20. Mm-hmm. But she also is showing that her body is responding to strength, and she is getting strong.
Yeah.
And so what makes her dangerous is that, what makes her dangerous is this. The reason why she got invited to train with Rich is that she went there and she was with us. She was 17 years old. It was November in 2017. And she's like up there at Rich's house, and she's like, I'm not sure what I should do. And she's like, what I want to do is I want to do that marathon row. I really was disappointed that I wasn't, in that elite. I want to do it. She sat down with a bottle of water and rode 3 hours and 15 minutes.
Oh
she would have placed 10th.
Wow.
By herself. That's what I'm talking about. When that workout got announced, it was disappointing how many games athletes complained.
Yeah.
And it shows when we were talking about mental side and mental weakness and allowing negative thought to propagate, she doesn't do that because she doesn't know any way other than what she grew up with, which is, I'm going to row a marathon.
Yeah.
That's why she's a threat.
Yeah.
So it's whether or not she can keep building her strength to be competitive.
Yeah.
That's her only limitation. She doesn't have fear like anybody else. She doesn't have adrenaline rushes. She doesn't have anxiety. I'll tell you one thing that before we go, we were in Hawaii, Tasia Persevich, my Heidi, myself, and Haley. And I do a lot of things, for free. And I was coaching over there for free. And I coached this particular class, and this guy came up afterwards and he's all, that was the greatest experience I have ever had.
Yeah.
And I just thanked him. And, that was a nice thing to say. He's like, no. And he looks at me, he's like, I'm telling you, I don't exercise. I don't like exercise. That was incredible. Wow. He says, I've never felt a part of a community like what you made me do. And which was so nice. Yeah. And he's all, I want to reward the favor. And I'm like, no, we're good. And he's like, can I charter a helicopter for you, and you can take 2 other people and you could tour Kauai? I'll pay the whole thing. Now I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm so afraid of heights. Like I'm with Heidi, and she's like, Haley and Tasia might enjoy it. Yeah. So I'm like, we'll get back to you. So we go back, and they're staying with us, and they're like, oh yeah, we'd love to do it. And I'm like, crap. So I call the guy back, and I'm like, okay, we'll do it.
Yeah.
So we show up that next morning, and it's windy this day, and it's kind of drizzly rain, but pockets of clear. And I'm like, oh, we're probably not going. And he's like, no, we're going, for sure. We're going. Well, so I see this helicopter, and there's no doors on it. And I'm like, he's all, yeah, no, we took the doors off because we thought it would be more fun for you guys. And I'm like, man. So then I go over there, and he's like, wait, you have 4. He says, there's only supposed to be 3 of you. And I'm like, oh, so we'll not go then.
Yeah.
If it's for 3, we'll just not go.
Yeah.
I'll sit out. And Heidi's like, no, you're going. And I'm like, no, then we'll all not go.
Yeah.
And so the guy's like, oh, no. We'll put a piece of foam in the middle between the pilot and the passenger, and we'll have the third person sit in the middle in the center, and the other 2 can go in the back. And I'm like, seems a little sketchy, but okay.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Well, the pilot was search and rescue. He was gnarly and super good. Like, I mean, he was legit young guy, you know, he's your age, but like, I look at him, it's like the things that he would say, it was like, okay, we're cool. Like, well, so we take off, and it was beautiful taking off, because you take off and you kind of go over the cane fields, and then you come over and you hit the water, and then you kind of start going up higher and higher and higher. Well, we come to this ridge, and in Kauai, the mountains are like this from the rain. And we were coming right into this one, and we were like, and we literally skim over the top. And I'm like, well, my headset, what I realized when we had to put the other person in there, they tried to daisy chain my headset with Heidi's headset, but it didn't work. The splitter didn't work. And so I couldn't speak by pushing the button.
Yeah.
So we're kind of up high, and we're going over these ridges, and we're going to the Kaanapali coast. And we kind of go down into valleys and up again. And I was gripping so tight. And every now and then my hand would, because I was next to the edge, my hand would get in the wind, and it would just shoot out, like it would pull my arm off. And I'm like, this is so crazy.
Yeah.
And when we would hit these crests because of the wind, the helicopter would like shoot up 100 feet, and then it would settle back down again.
Yeah.
Pilot was emotionless. Well, all of a sudden we're 2,000 feet off the ground. All of a sudden I hear in my headset, Haley's seatbelt is unbuckled.
Oh, no.
I hear Tasia. Well, Tasia's sitting right behind me. And I'm like, I can't speak. I'm like, so I'm grabbing Heidi's headset, and I'm like, you need to explain. And she's like, we have a huge problem. Well, I turn around, and I could see, but we're harnessed in. I could turn around, and I could see Haley over my shoulder, and she's petrified, like frozen, like in shock.
Yeah.
And I see her seatbelt out the door, and it's flapping. It's going whack, whack, whack against the side of the helicopter. The buckle is, and she's frozen. And I'm like, and I'm screaming. I'm like, you have to get it. And I'm looking, and I'm thinking, she's just going to jump, because she doesn't even know she's in a helicopter. She's such in shock.
Yeah.
And Tasia's like, I can't reach it. And I'm trying to get like Haley, and no one else can turn around.
Yeah.
The pilot was as cool as can be. He's like, no problem. I'm going to land the helicopter. We're over the jungle. There's no place to land. He's like, I got this. And he takes the helicopter, and Haley's on this side. He takes it, and we go into a spiral. He flips it up on its side so Haley can't fall out.
Yeah.
And we start spiraling towards the ground.
Yeah.
And as we're spiraling down, right, and the pilot's cool.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and meanwhile, so I'm looking straight at the ground down this way, and straight up the sky this way, and Haley's up here, and I'm like, I'm grabbing Heidi. I'm like, you have to get it. Well, then she gets it, and she's so nervous that she can't jam the thing in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Finally, though, gets it in. I mean, it was probably like 3 minutes with no seatbelt, and it was nuts. Yeah. Never, ever again. Ever.
Oh boy.
Boy. It was so. But that pilot. Well, and a week later, you know what? We were there, and a helicopter crashed, and everybody died. You know, the same thing. It was like, so never again.
Never again.
Yeah, no.
Well, I want to thank you for taking all the time. I know we went over a little bit, but I want to thank you for everything that you've done.
Thanks, man.
Just randomly reached out, and I was like, you know what? We reached out. Johnny, the owner, knows Julie Fouché, so we had her on week 1. Me and Johnny met Jason at Wadapalooza, and we started doing kind of the NC Fit programming. So I reached out to him, and he's like, yeah, man. And then I keep reaching out. He's like, I haven't heard back. So I'm like, okay. But I just kind of reached out to everybody, and just thanks again for saying
You're welcome.
taking your time. And I'm sure everybody's going to appreciate this.
Well, no, I appreciate it too. It's nice to be able to, especially in moments like this, to reach out to the community. I mean, you've been to the seminar, and you know, for me to support the people that have been supportive, we really need to do that. And what I'm finding is that, as a bummer this whole virus thing is, I mean, it's a massive bummer. I mean, it's at so many levels. But the bright spot is, like, we never would have been able to do this. And And I'm doing a lot of them, you know, like I'm doing them all around the world. And it's a way for me to be able to connect with the people that have been good to us on our side. And I'm grateful for that. Yeah, I wish you all the luck, man. I mean, if ever I can help, I mean, you're really close. Yeah, I think about this, you know, down the road. If you know, what I'll do is I'll keep you in mind definitely on that 2 hour.
Yeah.
When that comes available, and I'll obviously keep you involved with the level 2.
For
you
sure.
know, when that comes, that actually will be a lot of fun, because we're going to do the initial one. We'll do a trial one here, and it's not going to, it's going to be for free. So since you're close, it'd be good for you to maybe come.
Absolutely. Hit me up. I'm down.
Cool, man. All right. Thank you again. I appreciate all your listeners. I hope they enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm sure they will.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Again, Chris. See you, buddy.
All right. Yep. Thanks.